Hi everyone, welcome to Openmesh Town Hall podcast series. So Openmesh Town Hall, it's a part of Openmesh ODI initiative where we bring founders, developers, thought leaders and engineers around the world to talk about DePIN, talk about Web3, talk about AI related use cases, talking about data and infrastructure related. So today we have a co-founder of Natix, Ali Gods. So Ali is from Germany. So Natix is a decentralized mapping network, crowdsource camera data from around the world, and create a physical map of the world, which is really, really interesting. So unlike a lot of founders in Web3, Ali has a PhD in wireless communication. He has been in IoT and Web3 since 2018. So he's also a researcher, developer, and also he's an advisor and a co-founder. So welcome Ali. Nice to have you here at Openmesh podcast.
Thank you, Ashton. Thank you for having me. And these days I also try to be a DePIN degen. So yeah, all of the above you said, and a DePIN degen. But yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Cool. So let's take a step back. I think I'd like to hear a lot of co-founders, like some of the thought leaders' journey. So tell us about how did you get into Web3? With your, like, one thing I like about some of the founders, they have a really good reason. Some founders, they get into Web3 because they like the industry, or they happen to have some attachment to the industry, or some of founders, they actually have their thesis, or they study that industry, or they happen to work in that industry. So for you, doing your PhD, is that a sort of a interest with your research?
You mean if that is connected to how I got into Web3?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was quite a few things that helped me to get into Web3 and DePIN, by the way, because I got into DePIN very early on, again because of my education and because of what I was doing R&D on. But the first time that I got introduced into Web3 was obviously, like a lot of other people, was because of Bitcoin. I was hearing a lot about it, that it's this kind of currency that they use to pay, and obviously they use it for dark web a lot. I mean, we were talking, for me, this was like back in 2015, 2016. I was hearing a bunch of things. And then at some point I really got into it just to understand what it is. And back in the times when I was doing my PhD, this was during that period, it was a very common practice for me to read scientific papers and implement them. Because if you don't implement the papers, if you just read a scientific paper, you don't really understand the depth of how people are doing it. So just reading is very, very different, by the way, from implementing. Why did we implement them? Because we wanted to understand the core of it and try to learn from it, and then kind of use certain techniques that those guys did in our own research, or try to develop something that even improves, let's say, a certain improvement that they have, further improve certain improvement that they have done. So me being accustomed to reading and implementing papers, I read and implemented the Bitcoin paper. I mean, I read it and I was fascinated, and I was like, okay, this is crazy. It's a very simple mechanism, but it's quite insane. Implemented it, very, very, simple implementation, couple of blocks, and then, tried to further understand it. And that's where, I kind of fell in love with Bitcoin. And why it kind of appealed to me personally is because, I mean, as my name suggests, I'm originally from Iran. So it's in Middle East. It has a lot of conflicts already. We have been under sanctions even as citizens. So, I remember when my parents were basically sending me money for studying, it was extremely difficult. Like, I had to travel to Iran and sometimes bring cash, and then there's a limit of cash that you can bring. So it was insane. We had to ask, like, if somebody as a friend is coming, let's say to Germany, they had to bring some cash. And I mean, it was just extremely difficult to live as an Iranian outside Iran in Europe, right? Especially when my parents had to support me at that time still. So, you know, it immediately clicked with me that this is going to resolve a lot of pain points that I personally had dealing with the financial system. So this was like the aha moment number one. Aha moment number two was when I saw Helium, because, you know, I studied wireless communication. I was working on 5G. I knew LoRaWAN extremely well. You know, we started like working with LoRaWAN back in 2013 when it was during my bachelor's time, right? And then at my already PhD time, we were doing 5G. 5G was still at an R&D stage. We were talking back in 2014, 15, 16. So I knew all about 5G edge computing. We were actually hands-on working, and I was like, okay, what Helium is creating makes perfect sense, because it's an infrastructure that is very much decentralized by nature, because the base stations of telecommunication industry is actually, you know, you have to put a lot of these base stations all around. And I saw that with 5G, this is even a bigger pain point, because the connectivity range is lower, so you need even more of these stations. So it's a lot of infrastructure investment that these guys have to do. Actually, back in the time when we were doing 5G, we were worried about this as researchers, right? We were saying, if, you know, it takes quite some time until this thing comes to life, because it needs massive infrastructure investment, right? So for me, it was like a perfect model to crowdsource even 5G network. And you know, fast forward, Helium started doing 5G networks as well, and they're even more successful in the 5G network than they have been in LoRaWAN. So it took off. You know, if you look at the protocol revenue, it shows that 5G was a much better product fit, you know, than LoRaWAN. So this was the second aha moment. This was like back in 2017 as well, 17, 18, when Helium just launched. And so yeah, that's why I got super into DePIN. When I finished my PhD, I actually wanted to build something around DePIN. So I started kind of ideating something around the idea of demo. I don't know if you guys know, so car data. The background reason for that is because I applied as part of a big consortium. It was supposed to be a €6 million project to collect car data and monetize it without blockchain, without crypto, right? So this was a EU funded project, supposed to be a EU funded project. We ended up not getting it, but it was part of what they called Galileo. Galileo is the GPS infrastructure of Europe, and they were basically subsidizing a couple of projects that can build valuable business models. That's, you know, European Union does this. So I knew exactly car data, the value of it, and how the industry is moving. I was actually working in the autonomous driving sector during my PhD time. And yeah, so I knew this very well. So I wanted to build the crypto version of this, or the DePIN version of this. And then I met my other co-founder, and he wanted to build a decentralized compute platform. So, you know, we actually collectively decided, I don't know, that one is bigger and more interesting for both of us. So we started building that. We wanted to build an edge computing platform. We called it opportunistic edge computing platform. This is back in 2019 still.
I see.
You know, DePIN, decomp was not a thing back in the time. People were almost laughing at you. I had a chat with Gregor from Akash, and you know, he started even, I think, back in 2013, 2014. I mean, believe me when I say it, when you were saying I want to build a decentralized compute platform, they were thinking you're doing some sci-fi things, you know, not really believing in what you want to do. So we did the same thing. We wrote the entire technical paper, white paper. It was like an 80-page document. You know, we tested stuff around homomorphic encryption, ZK. Like we were really like on the techie side of the story, trying to build something. Did a couple of POCs. Then it started fundraising for Natix. Anyway, market went down. It was a very bad timing, and we couldn't fundraise. To be blunt, and the idea was sci-fi a little bit. I get that. So, you know, the first check that we got the advice like, you know, try to niche it down into one vertical, one use case. So we still tried to use edge computing, but not distributed computing. So one edge device, the application, the sensor became camera. So the edge computer on camera. Then, you know, the application became computer vision AI, then the vertical became smart city and mobility. So that's kind of how we, pivoted from a DePIN to a non-DePIN. And then a few years later on, we had a pain point, and then we pivoted back into DePIN. It kind of came very natural to us, because as soon as we found a problem in our business model that could be solved by DePIN, we said, okay, now we have a tech, we have a product, we have a company, and we think we were capable to actually take this forward. And I think 2 years later, we had revenue, we had a product set and everything, but we pivoted into what today you see as Natix Network, which is a DePIN version of what Natix was in 2020 and 2021.
Fantastic. I like good journeys. I think sometimes, when you look at not just within DePIN, like broader perspective, like in Web3, a lot of people just come into Web3. They like the hype. They want it to be part of the speculative spectrum. I like founders have a really solid, background and doing things. So it's great that you guys kind of like focus on the smart city initiative. So I was part of L1 chain back in 2017 and 2018 called Phantom. So Phantom, it was kind of before Solana, right? So it was a L1 chain, and I was part of the smart city initiative, right? So the use cases that we were looking at that time, because Phantom as a L1 chain, the core technology is a consensus as a service. You provide consensus, and I was thinking smart city would be a great use case. So we looked at transportation industry, we looked at supply logistics, tokenizing, maybe real estate, bunch of things. So I had privilege to work with a couple of smart city initiatives, like in Australia and Dubai. One of the use case specifically around autonomous machines, like a car can talk to each other, can talk to a traffic light. The idea was to eliminate the traffic lights itself, right? So the car can talk to each other by saying, hey, can I overtake you, and then I'll give you $0.00002 to overtake you, and it can talk to the camera and say, or at least the junction, and say, hey, I'm arriving in 1 minute and 45 seconds / whatever it is, and give me the privilege to pass, or give me the green signal to pass. So it's all built into the technology, so you don't see physical like traffic lights. I think we've seen a lot of these use cases, like smart city related use cases. And then I think IOTA, they pushed a lot with IoT devices, building all of that. And I think, what's your opinion, like why that the whole narrative basically disappeared in 2020 and 2021?
Very good question, actually. I think partially it's because the industry wasn't ready, right? I give you one example. From Natix's point of view, we could not launch Natix that easily. Right now we're using smartphones for mapping, right? Smartphones did not have a very strong computation power back in the times. As we went forward, they started to get stronger and stronger. Every year, it's like this rally of Apple and Samsung declaring their new chipsets, right? And everybody else, even Meta has joined this game with their Oculuses and so on, right? So it's getting more powerful and smaller. So, it became possible to either tap into commodity hardware or build a commodity hardware that is good enough for your application and is cheap enough that you can sell it to retail, right? So let's say, I think if you wanted to have, let's say these OBD plugs that Demo has, and the first version had actually some compute power, right? If you wanted to build it like 5 years ago, it would have been much more expensive with the same compute power. So at the end of the day, instead of paying $200-$300, it would have been $800-$900. And if you're selling an $800-$900 device to a household, it gets more difficult, right? It gets more difficult to convince them. So I think a lot of it was technology that it advanced, and now is the right time. And a lot of it was the wrong direction that a lot of these, I think, projects went. Again, I don't blame anyone, but it's a lot of trial and error. So DePIN has been there for a very long time. There were a lot of like DePIN models. IoT was trying to be the blockchain for DePIN, and then they realized like it just doesn't work. It doesn't add any extra value compared to, if you're a parachain on Polkadot, or if you're, an EVM, or if you're a Solana, right? So it was supposed to be something, but then it turned out. And then I also think like the way that people thought about it, right? I think back in the time, yes, IOTA tried to reduce the transaction cost and throughput and everything, but in my opinion, I'm not a decentralization maxi. You don't have to put everything on chain. I don't believe in this, right? So if you optimize between on-chain and off-chain, you don't actually need anymore that super high throughput. And I mean, you eventually need it because the industry is getting bigger and you have more and more projects. So as a blockchain, you need it, but eventually you don't need. And right now, come on, like let's be frank, we have too much block space, wasted block space, right? So I mean, who cares? I mean, right now we're building on let's say, I don't know, Solana and Peak because these guys are good at what they're doing. But 5 years, 10 years down the line, when the ecosystems are even stronger, like I think it gets less and less important which chain you kind of build on. There's more interoperability, and then you just find the block space that is still cheap at the end of the day, right? So yeah, it was kind of a trial and error that I was seeing, and we realized that with DePIN, I think back in the time, I think there is much more room when you're building an application in DePIN rather than if you're just building an infrastructure like a layer one. How many layer ones do we have right now for DePIN? A couple of them, very few, right? There are other layer ones that are also supporting that, but if you look at the applications, Helium, Natix, Demo, all these kind of things. So it was just much more interesting when you're bringing a real business than just yet being another, chain. I'm not saying it's not needed, but you don't need 15 of them. You probably need only a few of them, and that should work.
So talk to me about what are the use cases that, like, I remember this project in China. They had this project called Skynet, I think. They want to map the entire, the bunch of use cases that had. I think one of the good use case that I've seen, especially like urban planning, parking related. Imagine you have a visual map of a city, right? And one interesting use case I saw, what they're trying to do, they're trying to actually look at like natural disasters. They're looking at how people behave for specific, like maybe a danger situation where there's earthquake or something happen, like in a large or crowded area, how people react, and then they can actually plan the urban planning better. So collecting a lot of data, how traffic and how like the spatial, how people interact in a physical world in a time, like in a critical times, because they want to focus on like congestion, but also when people find like in a critical situations, how they will find these where there's a fire exits or where they're looking to drive off. So it's a very interesting, like this is their thesis, right? So they're looking at urban optimization, urban planning. Let's call it more like traffic flows and improving the infrastructure. So people will have a lot more flexibility, I would say. What kind of a, let's say, inspiration with your project with Natix? What do you want to give to, let's say, Web3 community?
So with Natix, first of all, let me say the first is that I always have said we're building a camera infrastructure. Why? Because camera is the most powerful sensor that you can tap into, because when you combine it with AI, computer vision AI, it's essentially, you can think of it as what a brain and a pair of eyes can do, right? So imagine the visual perception. By the way, when your brain is computing, think over 50% of it is because of the visual perception. That's why when you close your eyes, it's a resting mode kind of, or towards the resting mode, right? So it's very powerful, and you know, again, as a human, I think we can relate to how crippled we will be, how difficult it is for us to navigate, to understand if this sense is removed, right? So we're building the largest camera infrastructure because we see AI is coming. A lot of these cameras are anyway also equipped with AI chips, so we're building that infrastructure. Now let's go into what this camera infrastructure can do. We started with mapping. Because mapping is quite interesting, in my opinion. When I say mapping, you just immediately think of, let's say, Google Maps or Apple Maps and things like that. But for me, a lot of data-related DePIN projects, one way or another, they have to do with creating a digital twin of our world, a map of our world that is very much granular and up-to-date. Right? So in the terms of traditional maps, we have what we call a static layer of the map, the first layer of the map, which tells you where the roads are, where the buildings are, where the landmarks are, like very static stuff that maybe changes every few months or a few years even, right? And then we have over 2,000 dynamic layers. We have traffic signs, we have traffic, we have traffic lights, we have weather, we have all the elevation, all these kind of other things, right? And let's pick, for example, weather. It's not something that Natix does, but it's one dynamic layer of replicate of our world, which another DePIN or a centralized project can do. Traffic is something that Natix can help with, and it helps us with mobility and moving around. And then there are a bunch of other dynamic layers. So in my opinion, right now, when you look at the DePIN projects, they're either adding one dynamic layer to the digital twin of our world, even when you talk about car data, or enabling it. So if you're connectivity, you're enabling the kind of getting that data to build this map. If you are an RTK network, you're helping to localize that information that we have found very precisely on this map, or if you're a GPS network or whatnot, right? If you're a compute network, you're helping us to get more information about this. So a lot of the DePIN projects, I see most of them, they're somehow contributing to this, dynamic map of our world. That's what I call it, digital twin of our world. Explicitly, when we go about Natix, we're part of this stack. So we can both contribute into the static layer and a couple of other dynamic layers. For example, traffic. This is something that we can detect very, very easily, through the camera infrastructure. And then we can use this for optimized route planning. We can also contribute with other dynamic layers. For example, dynamic speed limit signs, any kind of, I would call it, traffic infrastructure that changes, traffic lights, things like that. Why do we need this information with real time? I mean, you might say, okay, I don't need it, I can still drive. Well, you don't need it, but the autonomous cars need it. There is a whole concept of high definition maps, which is very precise and very much updated. And for example, dynamic speed limit sign, when speed limit sign changes because of the road construction or weather condition and whatnot, they need this information to go level 3 autonomy. So it's a real pain point. And then when we expand beyond what our product is today, I think we can do a lot of other applications. So we went into natural disasters. So if you have a drone network, let's say, as soon as a natural disaster happens, you can fly it, and you can use AI to automatically detect people who are in those endangered areas. And imagine that we reward, I don't know, $100 per human that you detect, and it's validated, because we can go and rescue them. And we will know what to do. So there are a bunch of these other applications that we can do with different forms of cameras. But yeah, we're very much focused on dynamic information on the map that has to do with mobility. So with transportation, with navigation, things like that.
Okay, interesting. So when you look at like centralized, the large, let's say, use case or maybe initiative, I consider maybe Tesla, the fully autonomous driving capabilities. I mean, these guys been doing that for quite some time, because when I look at their initiative, I think in 2021 they talked about AI Day. On AI Day, they talked about hardware which is Dojo, which is highly optimized hardware just for to put those like a hardware on the car itself, right? And then have a bunch of sensors, and then pull the data, and then have a really optimized models to actually understand. I think Elon was talking about like instead of, I think previously a couple of models like the training models that existed before, it was just try to identify a curb versus a traffic light, but he was talking about more a general approach where it should train like a human, just to understand like a human, and then we'll be able to figure it out. And for the last couple of years, I think one of the big training is being done by, I think, Tesla compared to other providers, specifically around visual data. So what do you think they are doing right compared to another provider?
I really like this conversation, by the way, when we talk Tesla, because I believe like they're not DePIN, but they're one of the best ones out there. People think Tesla is a car company. I think Tesla is an AI company, if you ask me.
Yeah, of course.
And whatever they have done, I mean, look, today they just announced the robots and the robo taxis and the robo van, and it's getting more than just being just vehicles even with the robots. So they are an AI company, and they figured out for AI. Sorry.
And robotics company.
And robotics company, yeah. For me, robotics, by the way, back in the time when we were in PwC, for me, robotics is very much tied to AI. It's not exactly the same, but it's just too close, So what they figured out, I think, back in the times was that we need a lot of data. How can we get this data? And one of these ways to get the visual data for, let's say, autonomous driving was to ship their own vehicles to the user. And then while they're just driving, and they're also collecting the data, and they're improving their own backend models for autonomous driving, for ADAS applications. Even they're using some of the learnings and general models and things that they have created for the robots, right? So they realized this, and I tell you, by the way, the only models in Web2 non-DePIN that have worked is when you have your own network, and that network is going around delivering some value, right? And you also use that network to collect data. These companies have done it very, very efficiently. I can give you a couple of other examples. Like there is let's say a company like Uber, they can do their own mapping because they have a fleet of drivers going around. So if they, enable them to use a smartphone application or a dash cam or whatnot, these guys can do very, very efficient mapping in the locations that Uber is live, right? So minimal payment, because these guys are already on the road. They do a little bit of payment, sometimes not even, because they're providing utility. So they say, hey, I give you this dash cam, you can know if you get into an accident, and in the back they're basically doing mapping, right? This is one example. Tesla is another example. I give you a car, it's a car, you can drive it, it has a couple of very cool functionalities as well, and I'm collecting the data on the side to train this AI model that I have. So I think that's what Tesla did very, very different. But two things, and you might say, okay, so how do you want to compete with Tesla? So in our game is also a lot of data collection and training of the AIs, and kind of improving the way that we create this digital twin of our world. I think a couple of things. Yes, in the future, Tesla is going to go more and more in the world. But I think with DePIN, one of the things that we can do very, very efficiently is to deploy a network and mobilize them very, very effectively. So for Tesla is about the numbers, right? The higher the numbers are, they basically have a much higher minimum critical mass to be able to efficiently, let's say, build something that is for US roads, right? For a DePIN version of it, it's just much faster, because we can build that network even if you want in New York. We can coordinate that network much more efficiently. On top of that, I think the direction that the Tesla is going is what I call iPhone of cars, essentially. So Tesla is going from a car manufacturer or a car to a platform. The same way that, before iPhone, we had these, mobile manufacturers with their own apps and so on. And then iPhone came and they said, okay, we don't want to just build our own apps. We enable anyone to tap into the sensors of this phone and build their own apps. And suddenly the utility of iPhone went so high that nobody could compete with them. The only other major player was Google with the
hardware,
with the Google Play, right? So I believe this is the same way that we're going to experience. It's the same approach that we're going to see in the automotive. And Tesla is the pioneers of that. What people don't realize is that they're opening the door. They have already done that, so we can also tap into the data. They are also getting the data themselves to improve their own business models. And, it's just a matter of time. So I'm not really worried about, Tesla overtaking. But I think when Tesla does that, we're going to be equipped to capture the entire value, us and a lot of other DePIN projects with this approach. But at the end of the day, just closing the conversation is it's getting more and more about AI, and AI needs two things: compute and data. So it's going to be a war over compute and data, in my opinion.
Correct. I think the one thing that people don't realize, that centralized, if you want scalability, if you want optimization, centralized systems are really fantastic. However, the decentralized systems can be absolutely clunky and buggy, could be really difficult to scale. However, we have something called token economy. That economy and the tokenized, let's say, value sharing, tokenized incentives, tokenized behaviors, creating certain behaviors in an environment where you identify your participants, you create certain incentivization. So that's very powerful. I think in DePIN space, this is, I think, one of the key ingredient for a success compared to a centralized providers, because centralized providers, you have this dilemma called the bootstrapping problem, right? So whatever technology they build, they need to have enough customers to get into their ecosystem and paying it, and then they need to cross this bootstrapping problem. In our space, in DePIN space, or in Web3 space specifically, we can utilize, which is the financial aspects of the token economy and token incentivization to fill that gap. So by the time we have some utility, you can basically burn your treasury to support certain types of growth without compromising a lot. And I think in the Web2 world, that kind of a ecosystem don't exist. So I think it's very interesting the bootstrapping problem in Web2 world not necessarily exists too much in Web3 space. Okay, so let's talk about your products, right? So talk to us what can you do with it today? Do you guys have functional products? Talk to us about what can you do with it right now.
So our first product, which is the flagship product at the moment, is a smartphone application. It's called Drive And. You just download the app on your phone. You put the phone on the dashboard of your car. You drive around. We have created computer vision AI. We have optimized them to run on your smartphone. These AIs are basically looking through the lens of your camera into the street, and they're detecting what we have trained the AI to detect: traffic participants, damages on the infrastructure like potholes and so on, right? And you actually earn reward. It's a gamified user experience, so it's not very directly for every kilometer that you drive, you're going to get some token. It's a gamified experience that we have done. Actually, this was a very big challenge for us, to be honest with you. People say supply side is easy. I would actually challenge that, and I say supply side on smartphone is not super straightforward, but if you crack the code, it's extremely potent. So we gamified the user experience. It's a lot of fun also for it increases our retention and stickiness, but it's also a lot of fun for drivers who spend 8 hours on the road, without let's say much fun sometimes. We offer both crypto and non-crypto rewards. We have a marketplace that you can also go in there and get, non-crypto rewards, AirPods, Oculuses, gift cards, even other DePIN products. I would say we are right now the biggest one of the biggest, if not the biggest, DePIN product aggregators. You can find a lot of other DePIN products, that can help you monetize your life from from the Cooties ring to a weather station to a OBD plug that you put into your car, So different kind of products, and actually our community is loving it. We are helping other DePIN projects too. So this is the non-crypto aspect of it. And very importantly, the app also provides you other utilities other than earning. So you can get dashcam in the app, dashcam services. You can record your footage in case you get into an accident for insurance claiming. Navigation is live actually since a few months. So very similar quality of experience with speed limit alerts and basically guided navigation, voice command, things like that. Very similar quality that you're gonna get from Waze and Google Maps. We're adding ADAS functionalities to kind of give you warning when you're going on the lane or when you're getting too close to the car in front of you. So we tried for this app to be more than just an earning app, because when the bear market hits and earning is the only reason people come to your product, you're going to lose them as quickly as you gain them because of the token incentives that you explained. So this is our number one product. Now, number two product, which I'm very excited about, I cannot share the entire information, but we're building right now a new product which is going to be launched in a few weeks, and we're actually tapping into a new type of camera, and we're actually using the data both for mapping as well as autonomous driving. So that's kind of for us to expand a little bit of this revenue opportunity, because in my opinion, again, data and infrastructure is the same, and there are multiple purposes how you can monetize the data. In our case, it's mapping and autonomous driving industry at the moment that is willing to pay. I would even argue this latter pays more or generates more protocol revenue than even the mapping. But we're going to pursue both of them.
Nice. So talk to me a little bit about how it works. So it's a native app you download, and assuming that the app basically collects the data locally and train some information locally, and then push that data into some sort of a network that, let's call it more distributed network, that you maintain. What kind of data the individual mobile device going to upload?
So what we call metadata extraction. So your smartphone is basically processing every frame that your lens is generating, and in that frame it's detecting if there are cars, how many cars are there, if there are cars on the curb, so it's also detecting kind of where the cars are, to understand how many cars are parked, if there is a free parking available, if there's a pothole, if it was in the middle lane, right lane, left lane, traffic lights, traffic signs, things like that. So it's detecting all of this information, it's labeling it with time and location, and it's broadcasting that data outside to our system. Now, the latter part is centralized right now. That's why I said I'm not a decentralization maxi. We are going to decentralize more and more components of our value chain, but at the moment we are focused on the network and monetizing the network. So building the network and monetizing the network. I think decentralizing the compute, data storage, things like that, it's definitely on our roadmap, but it's not needed at this stage of our company, to be very honest with you. Is it fully decentralized? No. But it's not also supposed to be fully decentralized since day one, in my opinion. So everything has a journey. It takes some time. It's more important for us to build a successful business case around it and then go into fully decentralized mode, rather than just shipping something fully decentralized and nobody is yet using it.
Yep. Okay, that's a good point. So this going into a private, let's say, centralized database. And then based on the metadata you provide some sort of incentivization. I also like the idea, I think it's like a kind of air miles, right? So you travel, you travel destination, and then you earn points. With the points, you can swap into, you can buy a T-shirt, you can order a fruit basket, you can even use that points to actually buy a new air ticket. It's like an ecosystem where you can actually use those points. Very interesting. So talk to me about this metadata, like what kind of a metadata, and what can you do with the training models with the metadata? Like if you map, let's say, a city, and what are the minimum thresholds of information that you need to receive from multiple people to say that's actually true? If it's a pothole, one person said, okay, there's a pothole there, but how many, like, what are the thresholds that, how do you even measure these thresholds? Because you need to rely on multiple data points to say that's a truthful information. So how do you do that?
Correct. So we have a mechanism for adding what we call a dynamic information to the map, or removing a dynamic information to the map. Let's say a traffic sign, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that it works is that one person passes through a certain road, they detect a certain information, we get that. And then second person goes, this is the kind of the validator, right? It's double confirming that that information is there. And then the third person, and then we have this threshold, right? We do not reward more than a certain amount of people, and that varies between data to data, basically data point to data, data type to data type, because information has different decay rates, right? So for a period of time, we don't reward anyone else for that information that is passing. So if 20 guys pass through the same road and they detect the same thing, we only reward the first 3, essentially, for a certain period of time, right? And for a pothole, that is a few weeks, but for a traffic sign, is a little bit lower. For parking, that's even lower. It's within days and hours, essentially, right?
But how do you determine what number is suitable?
A lot of trial and error, and talking to our customers and seeing like how frequent do they need the data, right? If we do more than what they need, it's an overkill. If we do less than what they need, so that's what I said, it really depends per data point and based on the customer requirements and the customers that we have. So there might be one customer in the world that just needs it much more fresh and much more frequent. If they're not our customers, our existing customer has a requirement of, let's say, every 2 days, every 3 days, every week, every month, we're going to implement that. So it's a lot of trial and error, in my opinion, and a lot of chatting with the customers. I don't think there are some industry standards for very basic type of data, or very standard type of data, but as you expand data types, it's gonna become a bit more difficult to find out the granular numbers. In the future, we would like to go towards the direction that every customer can basically set their own requirements, and the network can collect the data and they get rewarded properly, because the customer is essentially rewarding them directly through the system.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the demand side. So let's say you got all this data, assuming this data is verified, and you maintain this like a really good integrity around the database that you have. So who are your main customers in the demand side?
So one of the main customers would be map and navigation service providers. And they're different, by the way. So map companies are the ones that are building maps with all of those dynamic layers on top of it, right? Over 2000. And they're providing these maps for navigation, but also for other services to their clients. And for each one of these dynamic layers, they have from tens of sources to thousands of sources of data, right? Or they're getting it from a partner that already has tens or thousands sources of data. So we're actually providing them with a couple of these dynamic layers. Dynamic traffic sign is one, traffic is another one, damages on the road infrastructure is another one. So we're helping them essentially to build maps that are better and more accurate with higher update frequency. With dynamic traffic signs or with dynamic speed limit signs, this is a big pain point right now in the autonomous driving industry, because in Europe, for example, to go level 3 autonomy, you need this data with a very high update frequency and very accurately. And right now, most of the mapping companies, they actually struggle to provide that update frequency. And they have a lot of blind spots too. With damages on the road infrastructure like potholes, cracks, faded road markings, this is not so much about update frequency, this is more about the blind spots that they have. And what we can do, which we realized, by the way, talking with one of the customers, was because we have a very targeted community building strategy. So we started with US, UK, a couple of countries in Central Europe, rather than spray and pray model, which is the entire world. We actually looked at the data at our coverage map, and we were covering between 70 to 90% of our focus cities, which is like New York, London, Tokyo, which is insane. And then the blind spots that we have this gamified approach in the app, which we can basically put a bounty on a certain block of New York, and then we can get that mapped in less than 24 hours. This is why the mapping companies are interested, to get the data, because we can, mobilize our network more efficient than any other. If you own, let's say, a last mile delivery company or a taxi sharing company like Uber, your drivers are not doing targeted mapping for you. Your drivers are essentially going around doing their daily job, and they're collecting. That's why you also mentioned, like, you need a lot of these guys to reach critical mass, and that's where it gets much longer. Big guys can do it, but only they can do it. And even big guys, when they go to a new city and they want to open up, it's going to take them some time to do it. Because of token incentive and the gamification that we have implemented, we can do it in a fraction of a time that these guys need themselves to do it. So map companies are one. Navigation companies, obviously they need this information for the route planning. They need live traffic information for the route planning, and they need basically maps. And then on top of that, HD map providers, this is very specific to the autonomous driving industry. They also need this information very precisely with a very high update frequency that we're going to provide. It's not just traffic sign, but it's also trees and basically any vertical infrastructure that they cannot get from satellite imagery, if you think about it. So this is like buses, stops, things like that you cannot analyze from satellite imagery. This is where they're interested to get information from us. And then it's a new avenue that we're exploring right now, which is for the autonomous driving. I can share more information later, but it's one of the biggest pain points of autonomous driving industry, and they need more information on how, simply said, they need more information on how traffic participants behave in the real world, because they use this information to make better ADAS systems or autonomous functionalities. And this is something that we can really help them. I hope it's good enough for understanding, but essentially I want to know how exactly bicycles move around the city or around the car that is moving. I want to know pedestrians, how they interact, especially when there is a pedestrian sidewalk and a car is turning right. I want to know exactly how these kind of traffic participants interact with one another and how they're moving, because I put my vehicle into this thing and I try to build better ADAS functionalities.
When you're talking about this, it just I got an idea. Like, I don't know if what do you think about this idea? So do you remember this app? It was really popular, and then Google bought that app. It's called Waze. So Waze is a really great mobile app. I mean, the reason why Waze became really popular, because if this community started sharing their traffic, with the traffic spot, exactly. and the supply and demand side is kind of really nice, because you can even talk to someone, right? You can chat to someone, and then you can see how many points that person earned by accurately providing these types of information. Imagine if you guys create a mobile app for a demand side, where I can download, that I can see what's happening in the road. And imagine someone is basically been providing this metadata to your model for a couple of times, and this person also staked your own tokens. So I can see when I see that person is providing this reliable information, because if that person provided wrong information, your network will slash the incentives. So I can rely on more reliable data streams, but also, because here's the other thing. So Vaze, it was collecting more traffic information based on, I'm assuming, with the location data. So they're probably using the model to train, like someone stopped the car for a while, and then multiple cars behind and in front of you, it understand maybe a traffic congestions, let's say a traffic jam. But in your case, you don't necessarily only collect that data, but you have a visual data, which is 100,000 times more richer. So with that, you probably will be able to provide the supply demand side a lot more insights to the user. Might be things like, okay, it's not just the traffic. By the way, the weather in 3 kilometers down the track is raining, right?
Yeah.
Because raining is witnessed, or something that captured by the camera. Would you be like, it's so interesting. Like it just struck me, like Waze, and then having your network, and then building a supply side, demand side, like an app for general public.
Yeah,
it would be really cool.
Well, good news is, Ashton, we're already doing that, and if you think about it, this was already something that I understood early on, and we were pushing, into our product strategy. We already shipped the navigation, not just only because of its utility, but also because it is what we call a network effect application, which Waze is also a network effect application. The more users you have in your network, the more data they generate, the better the quality of it, the quality of service gets for everyone. And that naturally pulls more user into your network, right? So navigation is one of these functionalities which Waze and Google Maps have mastered it with the different kind of sensor and data collection, which is just GPS data essentially, and movement data. We are having a much more powerful sensor at the end of the day, so it's going to be even crazier. But what happens with network effect applications here is that it basically introduces a very strong flywheel. The more drivers, the more data, the better the application gets, and that pulls in more driver, right? So it kind of naturally grows your ecosystem because you just have a very good product that is also very hard to beat in that region, right? Once you reach critical mass. So navigation was one of the first one that we put out there because we use the data of the network to improve the route planning and the experience for everyone. As we go on, we're going to add more features. Parking is another functionality that we're right now looking into add, and that is another network effect application. The more users you have, the more critical mass you have, let's say in New York, the better the quality of service gets, and no other app essentially can provide that level of service. So this is for us basically to make the supply side, as you said, like Waze and Google Map, the supply side is also the demand side of the network. And this is, I think, extremely powerful if you find also ways how to monetize the supply side, towards the demand of the network. So we have been working like this 100%, and it's still in the process, but I believe in like 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to be, sorry, I got a phone call. In 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to have a couple of these applications that are network effect and are of such a high quality that, a newcomer has a very hard time to steal our users.
Interesting. I mean, because you guys can kind of create that, I call it vertical integrated systems, right? So you have the network, you have the supply, demand, and also you have the incentives all tied into one, which is interesting. All right, so we already passed our time. I could spend with you maybe another half an hour to an hour. So let's touch base a few things about privacy. I think I'm sure you guys thought about this. In Google Maps, they improved their privacy a lot because based on user feedback. So how do you, like we know in the US, UK, and Australia, even in Australia, public places, obviously there's no privacy, right? So there's no privacy law in public places. However, Google is taking, it's especially at the Google Maps, they're taking steps to blur certain things. Of course, that probably when you view information, but we don't know in their own database for training, they just keep it all, probably everything raw files.
Correct.
Do you guys before, for the privacy and respectful people and surroundings, would you take some information from the device itself and you don't take certain data to your databases onto your servers? Do you do certain privacy or respectful things as a project?
We do. Well, respectful things actually, because we come from selling computer vision and camera products to municipalities in EU and governments, and it's a very sensitive topic in EU because of GDPR. So unlike UK and US and China, you cannot just put up a CCTV camera onto a certain road. Even if you're a business, your camera cannot point into the street. That's why I don't know if you're walking, let's say, in a city like Hamburg, you might see barely cameras, but they're only allowed to capture. They basically, if this is the wall, they put a camera, and the camera is pointing inward, not towards the road, because of the privacy. So this is a very, very big topic. We have been trying to build solutions that can actually sell, because if you're not privacy compliant, you don't pass the compliancy check, and they're not going to deploy your solution at the end. Simple as that. So the answer to your question is, first of all, we're not collecting at this stage any imagery. It's just AI is looking frame by frame into the images and detecting what the AI is trained to detect, and then it's deleting the images instantly on your device. So no
Locally.
images is being broadcasted outside your device. We don't have access to any imagery. Even if we collect imagery, it goes again back into edge computing. We anonymize videos and images on your device before they get out. Right? Obviously, anonymization is not 100% accurate. Nobody has 100% accurate. I'll give you an example. If the guy is like facing super sideways and the sun is shining on his face, and the AI might miss that, right? Because it's a lightweight model. But we can basically remove over 90-95% of the private information like faces and number plates already on your device, and then apply even a stronger model on the cloud to remove the PII. Personal identifier information. I think this is very important that any company does if you're dealing with imagery and you're collecting those imagery. So edge computing has been in even automotive for a very long time. And then there are companies that do very, very interesting anonymization. There's one company which I know from Berlin. You can check them out. They're called Brighter AI. So they do lossless anonymization. So what they do is that they basically use something like deepfake. They change your face to another face, right? But they still capture even your emotion. So if you're smiling, there's going to be another version of Ashton. It doesn't look like Ashton at all. But if you're worried, or if you're smiling, or this kind of general information is captured, but not your identity, right? Same thing they do with number plate, very kind of efficiently. So instead of just giving you a blurred number plate, they give you a changed number plate, and that's already happens, on the edge. And usually when you don't have the data distorted like that, it's much easier to train new AI models on top of it. So this is kind of the beauty of it. But privacy is number one priority in our system, and that's because just where we come from. We even filed a patent for a new AI framework, computer vision AI framework, that is, even more privacy compliant. So it's not the normal kind of imagery and the normal computer vision that you're used to. It's a different one, but it came from a pain point to be able to create. And believe me, I wouldn't have tried to build a decentralized camera infrastructure if I wasn't doing it in a privacy compliant way, even by design. Because if this thing falls into the wrong hands, it's just a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. So I don't feel comfortable doing that. Maybe some founders do, and they work with the government to do X, Y, Z. This can happen, but for us, it's a lot of responsibility at the end of the day. So we want to build something as strong as what we're building, as powerful, but we have to also put certain design elements into it so that it cannot be misused by anyone, even us.
Interesting. That's very important. The privacy part, it can be quite difficult. It can be also bottleneck for you guys. So my final question, since we run out of time, so what's a big update or something that you're really excited about within DePIN space that you think is going to add the most value in the next, let's say, 2 years?
You mean our updates or generally in the DePIN space?
I mean, you can talk about your project or in general in DePIN space.
I think I started talking about this, around a year ago. The way that I see it is that more DePIN projects are going to get intertwined and use each other's infrastructure and networks to be sensor resistant, to be, you know, kind of on their own, and to also tap into cheaper way of doing things, like faster and cheaper way of doing things. So for example, we are going to use Helium 5G infrastructure, which we're already kind of rewarding our community to do that, to transfer data, mapping data that the devices are, so between the devices and our backend infrastructure, right? We're going to use an RTK infrastructure of GeoNet, which enables us to collect data with centimeter accuracy, which increases the worth of our data. There are centralized RTK providers too, but you know, I can do it at a fraction of a cost with a project like GeoNet, so why not? We're going to use decentralized compute platforms like Akash to train our AI models at a fraction of a cost, because we have a lot of data and it just needs a lot of compute at the end of the day. So these are things that I see more and more coming. I see it in my own project and I see it in other projects. It's just, you know, I think it's inevitable, these kind of partnerships. So, you know, when you see these kind of partnerships in DePIN, I mean, old times it used to be a lot of bullshit partnerships, to be very honest with you. But right now I see a lot of really powerful partnerships that, you know, if these guys combine, it's a real scenario that they're helping each other out. It could be one-way road or it could be two-way road. Many of the times it might be one-way road. We are using RTK infrastructure of GeoNet to increase our localization accuracy, period. You know, GeoNet is not gaining anything network to network, let's say, speaking. From Natix's point of view, I think we're tapping into new camera types and, you know, new revenue avenues which are even more potent and more powerful, so like autonomous driving, which I told you about. This is very exciting for me. There's also a couple of DeFi elements and governance elements that we're putting out there. Our staking platform is going to go live. We're signing a couple of customers, which is very good, because people grill you when you're in DePIN about demand. It takes time, I know it, and I can understand other founders as well, and it really depends on the nature of your project as well. Sometimes it takes shorter, sometimes it takes longer, but you know, I think we have cracked the code, and we're going to show more of this, let's say, product market fit on the demand side. With the new product, it's going to be even, you know, a better, bigger product market fit with this new avenue of basically a bigger market cap, I think, not a bigger product market fit, with this new product that we're building, which can feed into autonomous driving applications too.
Interesting. I like the idea of like different DePIN projects working together. It's like Uber partnering up with McDonald's. It's going to be interesting, right? So and I think in our space, like we, you know, I've been talking to a lot of DePIN founders as well, co-founders and founders. We are very, very tiny compared to large corporations like, you know, Google, AWS. They're monopoly. I mean, they control the entire Web2 world, and they're coming to Web3 world as well. Like, you know, this is everything everyone should be concerned about, because often what happens, like, we don't realize the centralization. Like, these large corporations, they not only they control world data, they also control AI resources, they also control the world IT infrastructure. All in three categories, they are the monopoly. Three to four companies control the world data, world IT infrastructure, and world AI ecosystems. And I think what we should do in DePIN space, like the mentality of a lot of the founders I find lately, they're more open to collaboration and support, rather than going to AWS to use your training model. Even maybe your decentralized cloud might be shit compared to AWS, but because of the ethos, they're willing to actually compromise and try to get that work. I think I see this round, because for me, like, I've been in crypto since 2015 and Web3 since 2015. Early days, it was all about like, oh, I'm building another blockchain. I'm competing. I'm an Ethereum killer, right? It's L1 chains is like always like, okay, we are building this next generation of a blockchain. Come and build it. And it was a race, kind of a race. And then with the DeFi summer, it's another one, right? So it's like everybody saying, oh, we've got a best yield and we've got the best liquidity pools, we have the best sexy yield farming options, and etc. I think what I see in DePIN space, people are very open for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I've been talking to Mark. I've been talking to Mark from Aether. I just interviewed Tom from Fluence, and everybody's like very open to collaborate and share resources. I don't know, man. It's very weird feeling. Like in DePIN space, we get that feeling from founders.
I mean,
It's good. I feel
I'm
good. I
with
feel
you.
good.
I do my own share as well, and I made a tweet. I said, I don't know if you know Planet Apes. It says apes together strong. So I said DePINs together strong. It's as simple as that. Not everyone does that, Ashton. To be very very honest, but majority of the people in the space do that, which I really like and enjoy. I give you one example. It was not like this back in the time when I started Natix network, so we pivoted to Natix network with the crypto product. I went to another project which were steps ahead of us, 1 or 2 years, and I said, can we do some sort of a partnership together for our marketplace actually, so we can put your product, you also promote us, and something as stupid as an AMA. And this guy said, look, I'm not gonna put your product into my product, to promote it if it's not for money. And you need to pay me because we were not we're not selling hardware, so it's hard for us to put like a dollar value into the user, and we basically didn't agree. So he was all about like money. So when I built our own marketplace and it grew and we started to get other DePIN projects, I told myself, look, I'm not going to, like, one way for me is to just say, hey, we're, I don't know, let's say community size. It's just because his argument was my community size is bigger than your community size, right? It's just flexing over stupid things. And, I'm not going to do an AMA because, whatever, what's in it for us? And I just promised myself that I'm not going to do that, just for the simple reason that, DePINs together strong. I'm here to help other founders too. And if there is financial benefits in it for both of us, why not? Let's try to tap into that. But it doesn't always have to be transactional, in my opinion. I have this motto back in the times that we were incubated by Techstars. I don't know if you know them. They're second largest accelerator after Plug and Play. After Y Combinator.
YC.
They basically have this give first mentality. And give first means, you support someone, that you're gonna get some sort of a support back, but you don't know when and how, right? So it's not transactional. I am doing something right now nice, and I know at some point, you might do something nice back for me, but I don't expect the time nor how you're going to do it. Like, there is no expectation on that. It's just I'm kind of giving it first, right? Yeah. And it works so powerful, this motto with it. That's why I say Techstar is a cult. If I write to another Techstar CEO, no matter who he is right now, he will respond to me. That's just the vibe and the mentality. And I think DePIN right now, a lot of the people are like that. So going back to what you just said, I see this kind of mentality, which is very good. I experienced it, for example, first as well with the Peak guys. They're building a layer 1 for DePIN, and we're also friends after 1.5, 2 years of pushing the same narrative together and talking with one another. But it was a lot of give first for me, and I really enjoyed that. And I wasn't seeing that back in the times, but I'm seeing that more and more. Also because, Ashton, it's very contagious, right? If me, you, and 10 other people do it, the guy who doesn't do it, he will stand out. So you're even peer pressure to do the same thing, in my opinion, which is a very good culture to have in DePIN. I have to say it's a very positive something to have.
Yeah, I agree. I think like people don't realize how small of industry compared to the large players. Instead of like try to compete, just let's work together. I think we can do something good, and at least like we can showcase some use cases where, because this is the problem, right? So I always had problems when we were working, like when I was working Phantom, and I'm like, okay, so we're building this okay, consensus as a service, what is the use case? What can we do? Right. So I think building like real world use cases and building this network and then being able to have that composability between DePIN projects and providing a value to, could be a small community or a society. It can actually take off. I think 2025, hopefully, if there's a good year for Web3 and crypto, I think this year, next year, I believe like the DePIN will have a really strong exposure, I think. And if we work together, provide like really good use cases for people to not to speculate but actually use and provide feedback for the next cycle. So during bear market, we could actually build something really, really cool. Like potentially maybe can bring like the quality and the utility could be like similar to like a large S&P 500, ecosystem.
I agree.
So we should push
Token
that
launch is
narrative.
a very noisy thing, Ashton. I went through it myself. You guys haven't launched a token yet, right?
No.
Okay, so just friendly, how do you say, sharing of our experiences. It's a very noisy thing. It will distract you and your entire team to focus on something that is not your core business, but it's an enabler of your core business, right? Yet again, it needs attention because it's a double-edged sword at the end of the day. So it's gonna defocus the entire kind of company into this, and it's time consuming to deal with a lot of essentially BS that is in the space. Centralized exchange listing, nobody wants to go through that. I'd be very honest with you. It's just
the most wasteful, dumbest thing to do.
Exactly.
Paying like ridiculous amount like just to list.
It's nonsense, it's
Nonsense.
and it's like a bazaar negotiation. I'm not joking. It's that's for another story, but that's for another podcast. We can talk about it. But it's a bazaar negotiation. The guy says X, you say X minus 50%, and then you agree on something in between, right? So anyway, point being, it's very noisy. That's why you said in a bear market we can actually build something that is tangible, because in the bear market, nothing moves the market and nothing matters, and then the only thing that you probably find time to do and as a founder it pleases you, it's to focus on your product and your traction and building something that beats these big giant corporations. So looking forward to a bear market, man. I mean, I would love. I love to go through the bull market as well. That's a very good feeling for everyone, especially if you have been in crypto for many years, right? I'm sure you have your personal holdings, investments into whatever crypto. So it's a very pleasant experience. But I never believed that one day I would say it, man. Looking forward to the bear market to start, building without any noise in the market. We really actively try to cut the noise for ourselves as well, but it's still noisy.
Yeah. I think one of the philosophy that I always followed after Phantom, no exchange listing, and don't raise like ridiculous money, and don't really give a shit about token price at all, right? So after Phantom, I actually supported a couple of projects. They got listed in Coinbase without even reaching out to Coinbase, right? And then no market makers, all this crap, like just to stabilize pricing. Like, and I said to the team, and I said, listen, you're a tech project, you're tech founders. Your focus is to build a technology, understand the users, and understand your token economy, and incentivize the users and build a really good governance framework to manage your project. That's it. Everything else, don't listen to all these people in Telegram saying that, when is the token going to go up and all of that. And in Phantom, like even Openmesh now, like we've got like 31,000 or something in Telegram right now. And you know how many DMs I get? We haven't even launched the token. We haven't even like done anything. Like exchange listings, like BDs reaching out. We can list you this, and I have a copy paste message. Obviously I cannot tell you. It's a really bad message. I just copy paste and send to them. And then a lot of these people I talk to, they're like, oh, what is your exit strategy and how are you going to create a liquidity? How do you maintain liquidity concentration? And I say, listen, the market decide, right? So if your product, if your technology is not good enough, there's no point having like an inflated value just to maintain price for what? It's the most dumbest thing to do, and also most it's a resource. Like, why would you spend so much money on all these exchanges, market makers, to maintain a price because you want to look good? You have to come up with a great technology. You have to have a breakthroughs. Computer science community should accept you, not just a white paper or a flashy website. Computer science community, take a look at your white paper, take a look at your technology, can say, you know what, this is something, right? This is something that we've seen in Web2. This might work, and it may not have the full potential, but it's interesting. This is what I believe, like a technology, because if you provide a technology, you need to have your own breakthroughs within your technology offerings. If you don't have breakthroughs, coloring with like putting a lot of lipstick to your website and having a market makers to inflate the price is not going to do anything for you. It's not sustainable.
No, I agree. Man, I need to write a book on exchange listings and market makers. There is this one guy whom I know. He's right now working for a market maker, one of the honest guys, but he's writing a lot of interesting things about centralized exchanges and market makers and how it's just rugged from the bone. I need to share this information one day with the broader audience, because it's just, this is something that needs to be disrupted. I'm genuinely agreeing with you, Ashton. It's such a poisoned, in my opinion, environment, and there's just so much nonsense happening that I feel there's has to be some way to disrupt these guys. It's again, nothing against centralized exchanges, but pun intended, that it's a shit show. It's a lot of ugly, nasty stuff that I went and I saw as a founder, and honestly, a lot of founders kind of do not speak up about it because they fear, because they do hold power at the end of the day, right? And it's a mafia, man. Listing is a mafia. I'm already saying this, and they hold a power, and obviously they don't want to either throw away all of the good stuff that they have done, and they went through the process, and it was a lot of blood and sweat that went into it, or they just don't want to create enemies, right? So maybe I wouldn't do it as direct, but I wish somebody does it. I would be very supportive. But yeah, it's just one of the, it's except real scams that happen in crypto, which is a lot. It's another thing that I think it involves a lot of unfair behavior towards the founders.
Yeah, 100%. Like some of exchanges, like we used to build like models to detect like liquidity hunt operations back in like 2017, 2018. What we detected, like, because look, in centralized exchanges compared to like traditional markets, you have L3 order books that basically you can check, okay, what is a market participant fill rate, market participant impact. So these factors are, you have to have a log of that. So if someone liquidates someone, you can go and create a map and say, okay, this person liquidated someone. So if there is a liquidity hunt operation, that, let's say, manipulation of the market, you can go back and check, because you need to report if there is a manipulation happen. If it's the insider trading, you can actually log back and you can map into the person or the entity who did that. In crypto exchanges, first of all, you don't have L3 order books, you have L2 order books. L3 order books is available in Coinbase and Bitfinex. Other than these two exchanges, maybe some new exchanges might have it, but they who control that, the L3 order book, the actual logs, is the centralized exchange. And then you wonder, like, sometimes you list your project in centralized exchanges, and they also ask for you to provide liquidity, pay for a market maker, whatever it is, and then suddenly you have the movements that there's little spikes or little like wicks here and there. It takes your liquidity out, and you wonder like who did this. And apparently, I'm telling you, like what you said, like the mafia game, they're doing it internally.
Exchanges, yeah.
And they basically lower you into their platform. They take you hefty fee.
Yeah.
They also like ask your liquidity, and they basically take the liquidity away, and that's all they do. It's like a scams in Paris, you know.
Yeah. It's scam. It's a scam, and I fully agree with you. So going through it, obviously, I think, you know, now that I know certain things, I might have done certain things differently, to be very honest with you. But it turned out quite okay for us. We're not unhappy, but experiencing that, I think it's one of the things that was very, very tough for me as well to see. Because also another thing that happens, you know, when the game is rugged and you're still playing by the book, you will not win, right? If there is a mafia, but you want to go through the official way of doing things, you're not going to win, you know, and that's like as simple as that. You will lose, which is okay, you know, for us, integrity matters, but you know, at least you will put less importance and resources into it. So some of the stuff I understood later, aftermath of the story, and if I knew this, at least I would have put less honest resources into it, because I knew that probably the outcome will be more or less the same. But yeah, it was it's super interesting. That's for another talk over a beer probably, Ashton, and we can talk about it even more filterless. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you, man. It's you know, token for me, it's and whatever comes with it, it's really a double-edged sword. It can have very positive impact on your ecosystem, on your community, on a lot of things. And it can have a very negative impact on you and you know, on the community and everyone. I think, you know, as a founder, we just need to learn how to use it as a tool to improve our business, right? And this is the goal of any project. If anyone comes to your community and they're like, that's what I am trying to do as well. So we try to use a token as an incentive for anyone who wants to be part of our journey for the next years rather than next months, right? People might not be happy, you know, if you're, you know, into the DeFi ecosystem and you're used to just pump and dump, you might say, oh, but this is not the same in DeFi, you know, whatever. And my answer to you is, you know, I'm sorry, buddy, if you're not, you know, with us for the next few years, then we should rather, you know, take part now rather than, you know, in a few months. So, and this actually worked very well for us. The way that we design our incentives, when we incentivize long-term user behavior. So for example, we give some reward in the app for every month for the users, but we also have retrospective reward where we look into the, let's say, the back 12 months. And if somebody has been active for 12 months straight in a row, he gets another big reward from us, right? And then we realize that these guys that have been staying with us for 12 months, they really have as much faith into the project that I as a founder have. You know, I sometimes have like weekend calls with some of my community members. It's crazy, but I do, and I enjoy it. And we just nerd out about things, and they give me suggestions, and I give them probably some sneak peeks of whatever we're doing. So it's like a friendship, more or less, right? It's crazy that this happens, but coming from Web2, probably you won't apprehend it. But it is true, and these guys are in it pretty much very similar to me and a lot of other, you know, long-term stakeholders that I have. So, you know, another suggestion for any DePIN projects, incentivize long-term vision and behavior towards your project. You know, do not incentivize short-term speculative behavior.
Yeah,
I have done both through the time, and the model that worked the best was long-term behavior. You know, the more somebody stays within your project, you know, the more they should get, not even linearly, but exponentially or something in between.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a harder to basically practically test and make sure that works, but whenever you got it, is a really good sustainable model. Okay, all right. So thank you, like, for your time today. I think I really enjoyed our conversation, and often these deep in discussions, we stay within the project. But I think today we just over we passed the time limit. I think for me, it's quite personally personally I was interested in some of the use cases that you talked about, because I was part of certain initiatives in the past. But at the same time, I think I really enjoyed, discussing as a founder to another founder, going through journey, not talking about just you have the best XYZ, and talking about the real journey. So I think it's very important people to know. I mean, we should have another discussion about our journeys, because people don't realize how difficult it is to be a founder in Web3, because in Web2 world, like you could raise money, and then you've got, you have money in the bank and you're happy, and then you just pay for it and you build it. But in Web3 space, like often your liquidity or your funds in Ethereum or some other assets, and then that also fluctuate. And you have to maintain your community. Community often is not directly related to your product. They're basically speculators. And you have to manage that expectation of those people. And then on top of that, you have to build a decentralized way of doing things, which is also, you have to be open, you have to be transparent, you have to be accountable, you have to be public. And then the stress limits are absolutely crazy compared to running a typical SaaS product or a Web2 company. So you have the pain tolerance for like an elephant. People don't understand what does that look like going through those hard times. But we should have another call specifically about the journeys. I like people being in a couple of cycles in the past and coming through that, because a lot of founders, they give up. I've seen a lot of people who joined early days of like Phantom or whatever, and they got success and then they left. They're like, I cannot do this anymore, right? So this is done for me. I would rather build a real estate portfolio and then just be happy, or I just go back to Web2 world. But I respect people who are coming back and learn from the lesson learned, and then apply things that they made correct, right and wrong, and then improve that. So it's good. So let's have another call. But for today, thank you very much. I had a great time. And
I appreciate it, Ashton. It was one of the best talks that I did recently. I love when founders nerd out. It's one of the best, especially when it comes naturally. It's one of the best conversations for me. So no, thank you for